Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watch One, and thanks for logging on. Today we are looking at the Panerai Luminor GMT PAM-270, 44 millimeters with the 1950 case in brushed stainless steel. This watch is a veritable toy box for watch guys because all of essentially the content that excites guys, a great history, a fantastic time-tested style. You want an in-house movement? You got it. You want sports watch versatility? How about 100 meters water resistance? You want complication? How about a second time zone, an AM/PM indicator, a jump date, a 10-day power reserve with a power reserve indicator? Will that work for you? Well, the bottom line is the PAM-270 gives you all of this in a phenomenally attractive package, more highly stylized than the original Panerai Luminor. This watch uses the compound curvature and the elegance of the 1950 case in a very wearable 44 millimeter cushion case format with just enough contrast between polished and brushed surfaces and that iconic, unmistakable Panerai Luminor profile. On the wrist, you can see my wrist, 6 1/3 inches, 16 centimeters. This is actually the watch that I prefer to wear, the 1950 case with the 44 millimeter size. Now, 16 centimeters is not a big wrist. It's on the lower end of the scale for a guy, but the bottom line is this watch wears very comfortably and very attractively. Proportionally, it's a good match because you can see as short as the lugs are, they don't overhang the edges of my wrist. Now, the 47 millimeter Luminor 1950 case can push the limits if your wrist is down around 15, 16 centimeters, but the 44 is the perfect option because it gives you that original real estate presence, that original kind of wrist impact of the first 1993 to present Betterini case, Panerai Luminor in 44 millimeters. But what you're getting with the 1950 is you're getting a watch with an extra dimension, because whereas that original watch is a bold, aggressive, and iconic sports watch, the PAM-270 with the 1950 case is all of those things, but it's also refined with a measure of distinct elegance. Now you'll see that starts, since we're talking ergonomics, with the strap itself, which is not the typical calfskin that you're used to seeing on Panerai watches, nor is it a rubber strap, but alligator on the top. You can see the combination of alligator with a sort of ecru off-white contrasting stitch on the bottom, very supple, tan calfskin, very smooth against the skin. It imparts a different look. Alligator is considered to be a more upscale, more premium material for a strap. When you're going for a specific look that is a versatile watch, taking a sports watch 1 foot out of the water and 1 foot onto the, shall we say, the dance floor, the ballroom floor, the restaurant threshold, you definitely want alligator to complement the look because it can take that hard edge off a sports watch, make it more versatile, and make it a more welcome companion when you are wearing the sports jacket. The PAM-270 has that quality. Likewise, it keeps the metal relatively muted. You can see that the large traditional Panerai trapezoidal pin buckle is nice and discreet, finely brushed. It matches the finish of the case and of the lugs. Now there is just enough contrast with the fully polished bezel and a dramatic, almost vintage style effect in the extreme curvature of the sapphire crystal. Now this is designed to evoke that distortion effect that you see on plexiglass crystals of vintage Panerai combat watches from the 1930s, the 40s, and the 50s, and the PAM-270 pulls it off beautifully. Make no mistake, this is not a stock Luminor crystal. It has been self-consciously styled to create that vintage look, and it does so beautifully. That's an advantage of this particular reference that's shared with only a couple of other Panerai Luminor references, so it's distinctive. It's also very beautiful. Now when we look at the watch head-on, you can see there's a lot to take in. First of all, it's unmistakable as a Luminor. This particular example features one of the classic sandwich dials, so a fully loomed disc, fully loomed to create a very thick, pronounced layer of superluminova, and then a stencil featuring the essential characters of the dial, the quarter Arabics, the indices themselves, the little indexes on the AM/PM indicator and small second subdial at 9. That stencil is then put on top of the fully loomed disc, and the result is that day or night, the dial has a charismatic depth to it, a three-dimensional effect, especially when you see the lume shining up through those hollow wells of the stencil at night. The sandwich dial is uniquely Panerai, and people associate it with Panerai watches from the 1930s to the present. It's part of that continuity, that historic authenticity that really draws people to the brand and imparts that passion to the Paneristi collectors. Other elements are designed to add practicality, complexity, and value without spoiling that classic aesthetic. Now you can see that the GMT, the second time zone, is a third hand black oxidized so that it blends in with the base color of the dial. You can see it when you look for it, and of course it is illumined so you can see it at night too, but it's only there when you look at it. It doesn't clutter the appearance of the dial, and you can superimpose the local hour hand over it when you don't need that second time zone to really clean up the face of the PAM-270. It has a dog fang style power reserve indicator at 6 o'clock. You'll notice this is a 10-day automatic movement, so if you're like many Paneristi and you have a small stable of these watches, this watch is good to go if you want to put it down as you're cycling through your rotation. Not only will it be able to operate for over a week without any kind of intervention on your part, but for peace of mind, since you do have that date and a second time zone to keep track of, you'll know exactly where its state of wind sits. Now, you have the date window at 3 o'clock, and the nice thing about it is, like the GMT hand, it's well integrated. It's well hidden. It's really only there when you want to see it. There isn't any kind of frame, there isn't any kind of sculpting about the window itself. It's discreetly small, and of course with the monotone date disc blends right in. Well done on Panerai's part. Now I talk about this watch being an icon, and while the 1950 case does essentially evolve the 1993 Betterini case, it also harks back to the original Combat Divers, which did feature this more complex, more contoured case shape, and it has in common with all Panerai Luminor references the device protecting the crown. This was one of the true, shall we say, vintage and modern day trump cards of this particular design. First fielded in the late 1940s, believed to have first been sent out to the field, perhaps 1949, 1950. It was patented in 1956. An icon aesthetically, it's also hugely functional, because with this locking lever, you have the ability to make the crown instantly accessible such that you can wind the watch, you can pull the crown and set the watch, and you can do all of that without having to wind out a screw-down crown. So you're not going to wear out the seals themselves as you might in a conventional dive watch. Think Rolex, think Breitling, think Omega. You're not constantly working that crown in and out through the rubber seals. Plus, because the crown is essentially released as soon as you raise the lever, it's easy to manipulate when your hands are wet, sweaty, or gloved. So very practical. The locking lever itself is also a fantastic conversation piece amongst those who've never seen it before. And this example, hailing from 2009, features the later refinement known as the runner bearing. You can see that little dot on the cam holding the crown in place, but it is a little bearing that smooths the transition from open to closed and vice versa with the lever itself, reducing the feeling of friction, reducing the feeling of metal on metal that would in any way detract from the luxury experience and the modern day luxury image, the upscale refinement of Panerai. So even the classic elements have gotten that silk touch from Panerai. Now on the case back, you see the goods. Now this is the Panerai Caliber 2003, part of the original family of Panerai in-house movements. Rolled out in the mid-2000s, it was the first time since the company's inception as a watchmaker in the 1930s. Now, it was the first time they had ever used their own in-house, self-made, engineered, and manufactured movements. A massive breakthrough. It really completes the circle. When I talk about Panerai starting out as a military supplier, originally a watch repair shop and school in the 19th century, became a military supplier around the turn of the century, became a military watch supplier in the 1930s. It wasn't until about 2005, 2006 we started to see these Panerai in-house movements. But Panerai is now a true manufacturer. They build the case, they build that iconic dial, and now they build their own movements. So you're getting a true luxury product through and through. 10-day power reserve, automatic winding, ceramic rotor bearings, sealed for life, unlubricated for high efficiency. They replace one of the critical Achilles heels of every automatic watch movement, the winding rotor bearing. Free-sprung, dual-anchored balance bridge. This is important because in the modern age, people are rough on their sports watches. An entire generation in the 80s and 90s essentially grew up thinking that luxury watches meant Rolex, and everyone knows that Rolex means durability. So Panerai realized it needed a family of in-house movements that were fine and sophisticated, but also very tough to live up to the expectations essentially created by a generation of Rolex users and the image of the rough and tumble Panerai combat watches. Rolex, you've got a rival right here in Panerai. Exceptionally durable, also exceptionally sophisticated, because you do get that 3-barrel design, you do get the 10 days of autonomy, you do get the 2 separate time zones, and you get all of that in a watch that's nice and tough. Again, Rolex style. Also beautifully finished, so you have a gorgeous vista back here, but don't overlook this key distinction. Right here at the lugs, you have a push-pin quick-release system for the bars that retain the straps. Now, everyone who knows Panerai knows that first and foremost, it's a company that's about heritage. It's a company that's about watches that look simple but give more than you expect, and it's about swapping straps, I should say. Now you can start strap swapping with the PAM-270 quite easily. Because of that quick release system, you no longer have to take a screwdriver to the lugs, so there's no danger of marring this fine finish. Now you can see this watch, which I liken to a bit of a toy box for watch guys. On our website, Watch You Want, you can see the high resolution images we are posting. This watch represents phenomenal value. A watch that can be formal, a watch that can be tough, a watch that's true to history, a watch that features the modern refinements of Panerai as a luxury watchmaker, and of course a watch that is a true manufacturer product from crystal to movement. This is the Panerai Luminor GMT PAM-270, available on our website, Watch You Want.